Hi everyone. This is a talk about detecting and defending privacy attack vectors. I'm just going to share my screen. And you might notice from this talk that I'm a massive Marvel fan. And it turns out that Doomsday happens to coincide with a legal change in America, which is actually a law called SB 690, which is the kind of closing of CIPA claims or an update to CIPA claims. That means that for California Invasion of Privacy Act kind of lawsuits, basically they'll stop or potentially stop at that point. What it does mean is that between now and December, i.e., the next 6 months, there's going to be a flood of new cases. So it is very much going to be kind of doomsday in terms of the ending of those SIPA claims, but it's going to be a bit crazy between now and then. So the focus of this talk is really about looking at what your kind of holes are and how you can defend against those holes and make sure you don't get hit. So I also did talk about US privacy class actions in the past. It's on the MeasureMinds blog. We'll send a link to it afterwards, or I'll post it in Zoom chat. But yeah, I would recommend you watch that video in addition to the talk that I'm going to go through here today. Quick bit about myself. So I'm Phil Pearce, Analytics Director and founder at MeasureMinds. We normally do Google Analytics, GTM, Looker Studio, and CMP setup, CMP audits, and increasingly sort of privacy defenses. We're also unique in the sense that we've got our own sort of CMP scanner or GTM scanner that will detect kind of holes and give you a privacy score for your GTM account if you're using Google Consent Mode, that is. We've also got a Google Sheet extension as well now, which can bulk scan. And our scanner is free to run, and we keep kind of coming runner up in prizes. Hopefully, at one point we'll win an award for it. But go check it out; it's really cool. And there's also, if you want to use the paid version of it, there's a 25% discount at the end of this talk. But the Chrome extension is 100% free. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, we're going to go through what is doomsday, why is it incurring now, what are the three main factors? So this complex technical environment, acceleration in privacy tech, movements in the sort of plaintiff or plaintiff attorneys incentives, or why are they kind of moving at speed? And then we'll just do a quick check to see what your risk exposure is. And we're going to use three kind of checks to do that. So yes, I'm afraid there is going to be homework for this talk. Sorry. If you want to grab that link down there, so upl.inc/mm for MeasureMinds -quiz. So upl.inc/mm-quiz. That allows you to open up a Google Sheet, and then you can start going through the quiz. And there's three tabs on that quiz, and you'll start with the first one. So this is going to be kind of you're going to end this session with your score and know how good or bad you are. The quiz itself, the first quiz is a risk score. The next one is a known issues or privacy attack vectors. Then we go into defensive measures, how good you are at detecting, scanning, etc., and also some people and process bits in there. So yeah, and from the above three checks or quizzes, you'll have this overall score, and you'll know, do you need to panic and call in external help, or are you okay? So with that, let's go. So why are we in kind of a perfect storm now? Why is this sort of doomsday incurring now? Well, it's really three things. The first thing is if you take GDPR as an example, it's a very old law. It's over 8 years now. And in fact, some of the first CMPs, some of you might have heard of Optanon, which was what OneTrust bought. That's actually 10 years old, that technology. So we're talking very kind of retro in terms of some of these laws and the technologies to solve or comply with those laws. We've also got new laws that have come into effect, little baby laws, be it Google Consent Mode V1, V2 adding the add user data and add personalization. And then also we've got some flavors on that. So Microsoft sort of doing their own thing with ad storage with a capital S for some strange reason. Microsoft can't want to just pick a different letter capitalization. And then Amazon are also doing their own version of consent mode, or pretty very similar to Google consent mode with two functions that they support. And then we've also got the global privacy control standard. Sorry for the typo on that one. It's just GPC. That's basically the new do not track. So that's like an on or off. You can't set it in Chrome, ironically, unless you've got a browser extension. You can only set it in Firefox or Brave. But towards the end of the year, that GCP signal is going to become part of Chrome as well. So it's an additional thing that you need to make sure that your CMP is honoring and listening out for. And then we've got some big technical debt problems. You got to remember that Google, for instance, started with GTM and GA3, then they had GA4 using GTAG, and then you've got some mix of both. Sometimes you've got GTM inline, and then you've got GTAG inline as well. And you may even have GTM zones, which is loading a second GTM account behind the scenes. And you layer that on top with consent mode defaults as well, either loaded above GTM or within GTM. And it's a real kind of mess in terms of this mountain of technical things all stacked on top of each other, which makes it a lot harder to set up and also increases the chance of it going wrong, most often by accident. And then what also makes it harder is there's no global standards for some of these things. So taking the example of a footer cookie settings link or even a DSAR opt-out link, these are different across every CMP. There's not good interoperability. So when you change CMPs, you have to change the JavaScript function that re-invokes the CMP. And the same with the DSAR link. So we're missing this kind of global standard for these kind of footer links. So the second kind of factor here is this private sector involvement in America. In America, it's kind of like parking wardens, but just really expensive parking wardens. And it's 5K per ticket there per user, not like so and that can be a lot of money when you start talking about all California users. This is under a law called California Invasion of Privacy Act, which is a law about wiretapping that's been repurposed for the internet or web, or specifically for targeting tags. One of the key things about it is there's 0 days to cure. So if you get hit with a CIPA demand letter or settlement, you don't have any time to fix it. It's like too late, and it allows for a private right of action. So a plaintiff or even an individual can take a company to court. It's not only regulators that have the power there; it's users that also have the power to kind of do that. So here's an example of that. Here, AT&T got $177 million lawsuit that they settled, and there's been some other big CIPA lawsuits in this list. So it's quite a nasty kind of world to kind of be in. If you get it wrong, it's very expensive. And hence why these plaintiffs or sort of privacy hawks are sort of ramping up in terms of that activity between now and the next 6 months. And because it's very much like a bounty hunter kind of game. The other sort of factor here is it's a lot easier to actually detect privacy problems and holes now, because you've got the advent of Claude and ChatGPT that are actually quite good at building a CMP scanner or a network scanner, and you don't necessarily need to be a developer to build those. So for a non-technical person like a plaintiff, they can potentially see what's going on, run a scan, and do that in bulk. Also taking example of GTM Spy, which has like a chat interface, easier to use, and then MCP servers, which allow for kind of network scanning and controlling an agent to kind of do things. And then we've also got TMS scanners, so GTM scanners, Adobe Launch scanners, etc. So all of these new technologies allow or facilitate the ability to detect problems more easily, i.e. the sort of the sentinels. So we are going to be going into, we're in an AI world, and that makes things easier to run and scan and detect. So more is going to get picked up. So you put all those three things together, you've got a very old CMP environment, lots of technical debt. You've got highly motivated or incentivized plaintiffs, and then you've got the ability to detect holes much easier because of advances in AI, and the cost to building those tools or detection techniques is a lot less. So in effect, we're going into this kind of legal battle world. That's what's going to happen pretty soon. And here's an example of that. This is the number of lawsuits that have been filed. So not demand letters, which are more almost invisible. These are actual settlements or cases. And you can see here they're like almost doubling each year. And I expect that to triple in 2026 because of this ramp up. And the other thing I would say about that ramp up is the more money these plaintiffs make, the more they invest in the tools and technology and get better at detecting. So it's kind of it's a self-fulfilling or self-funding sort of circle. Every win or settlement, they in effect get stronger, better, etc. So you may be thinking, well, hold on a second, isn't there an exemption for CIPA that stops these wiretapping claims from applying? Well, you're right in the sense there is an exemption. The problem is that it doesn't apply now. It only applies in 6 months' time. There was an intention to try to get it to apply historically, but that update got removed when it was became sort of submitted to the Senate. So unfortunately, any lawsuits that get filed between now and the end of the year still apply, unfortunately. So you can't turn back time if you get hit. You're going to either have to settle or defend. That's your only kind of two options. So you really need to get ready for this crazy world that we're going to enter. However, there are, and on the AI side again, there are a lot of new tools that are starting to make it easier for plaintiffs to detect holes and automate submissions of claims and demand letters. On the flip side, there's also a bunch of new tools for helping to build up your defenses and internally kind of detect those things. So there's a bunch that I'm listing here, obviously consent mode monitor being one of those tools. You generally need a selection of tools, not just one. Um, so the reality is you probably will get hit with one of these sort of cases just because the volume of them being sent out. Uh, they are ultimately inevitable. The question really becomes, are you going to be hit first? And that is where we're going to jump to the quiz, just to see what your risk score is. So I've scored this out of 10 areas. So now's time to get your pen and papers out. So if you open up that link, so upl.inc/mm-quiz, that's going to take you to a Google sheet with tabs on it. And you want the first tab in that list. And it's called the risk score. That's the one in red. So the first question now, if you're an agency, fill this in for your most affected brand. If you're a client, just fill it in for your own website. So if you work in one of these three verticals, so health, finance, children's, mark the tick box on that Google sheet with an X. I should mention if it's a site where you've got a hosted cart or you do a finance, i.e. kind of buy now, pay later, you would also get caught by that finance kind of vertical area. So if that's you, put a 1 out of 10 or put a X on the Google sheet like this here. So that you'll notice it's pre-ticked. If you're not in that vertical, press the space bar. Yes, the space bar, sorry. And it will untick it like that. If you're in one of these other verticals, so publishing, charity, e-commerce, again, mark that with a space, i.e. tick. The reason publishers are in there because they make money from selling user data. They're basically data brokers. Charity sites are a little bit more affected because PR is more important to them and they're more vulnerable to negative PR, i.e. donations. And e-commerce, they're more vulnerable, especially in Q4 where you've got Black Friday and peak periods. And if there's like a cease and desist and their conversion data or remarketing data is disabled, that's a big problem for those businesses. So that's why they're kind of second, they're high up on the target list. The other ones would be if your website is making more than 25 million in global revenue, that's going to get caught by CCPRA. CIPA doesn't have that threshold, but CCPRA does. And then if you're in pre-IPO, so basically you're about to go public, like Claude, for example, and soon OpenAI, then again, you're more susceptible because VCs like their money to be used for growth, not paying off lawsuits. And then the other one, next field is, are 50% of your sales coming from your website, i.e., it's not a clicks and mortar site, or do you make more than a million, or do you spend more than $1 million on Google Ads so you can check SpyFu to see that, or if you make most of your money in Q4 or Black Friday, put an X or space on that field. If you've got hit with past settlements, or your competitors have been hit. In this case here, we've got Netflix that have got hit with a VIPA claim. Then put an X on that. You notice Disney seem to come up a lot in this talk. They seem to be kind of tripping over every wire possible at the moment in terms of privacy and privacy mistakes. Also, if you're not using a TMS, I mean, like everyone really should be, like let's say using inline GTAG, not via GTM, put an X on that. If you're not using a server-side solution, so either Google server-side or State, put an X. If you're using OneTrust, sorry, OneTrust, but it's very easy to parse or understand the OneTrust settings, and that increases the chance you'll get hit with a case because it's then also easier to see that if those settings are wrong. Bear in mind OneTrust being quite old and easy to find problems with, and also OneTrust tends to be bigger sites as well. So it's actually sometimes better to pick a non-OneTrust CMP. It makes you less likely to be targeted. Also, if your privacy policy hasn't been reviewed in the last 12 months, or you don't have two contact mechanisms on your privacy policy, so email and chat, or email and phone call. If you're above 25 million, you're caught by CPRA, you need the 11 categories of data. And if you're missing a dynamic privacy policy, so for instance, you do a scan and it adds a new cookie to that list. If you're not doing any of those four, put a tick on that field. If you're missing any of these four, so cookie policy, cookie settings, or a floating footer, or you don't have a do not sell link, or you don't have a DSAR opt-out, again, put an X on that field for your footer links. If you're not doing good technical tests, so you're not honoring a GCP signal, so if you install a Chrome extension to send a GCP on, and your CMP doesn't say message received and honored, and it doesn't send an opt-out for ad storage, then put an X on that one. If your opt-out doesn't actually work, you definitely need to put an X on that one. And if you're forgetting to treat California users differently, I generally suggest putting California users defaulting to opt-in mode rather than opt-out. So with the rest of the US, put opt-out, like floating footer. California, I'd set closer to GDPR mode. Modal banner with an opt-in. Opt-in is your strongest form of defense, i.e. positive consent. It's very difficult to say that someone's being wiretapped or listened to if they've accepted being listened to. Also, in terms of the frequency you're running these audits, generally I would say if you've not changed or either checked your CMP setup or not changed within CMPs in the last 2 years, when you change CMP, the settings tend to get reviewed. So you'll, again, reduce your risk. If you don't know what a TMS scanner is, put an X on that box. So that would be a GTM or Adobe Launch Scanner. If you're not testing a DSAR opt-out, like doing a kind of a fire drill, actually filling in an opt-out form and seeing if it's responded to within 30 days internally, or if you don't have a ready-made PDF defense pack. So if a regulator audits you, you can't say, look, here's all our processes, people, techniques, etc., or tools that we're using to make sure that we're trying to do the right thing. So if you haven't got one of those, or you don't have your kind of defenses ready to go, then put a tick on that one. So that's most of the process kind of pieces. So you'll probably have a score for that. We're going to jump to the second tab now, which is the privacy attack vectors, or sort of technical holes. So this one here is one of the most common technical holes. You may also hear the expression in the legal world called a hub and spoke lawsuit. What those are is they go after a particular bit of technology, in this case, share this or the Facebook like button, and they then look for brands using that technology. The problem with share this is that you can't pay to use it, and its business model is selling user data. So there's no service provider exemption for it. It's not like a video provider that you could pay to use. So it's almost certainly caught by do not sell, and it's a remarketing tag. And the other um, problem with it is it often gets added in the header of sites by developers, not inside GTM, etc. So often it sits outside consent, and when you send an opt-out signal, it still runs in most cases. Sometimes the same with the Facebook like button as well. So if you see these and you don't have, let's say, a OneTrust kind of script type equals text, so it only activates on accept or doesn't activate on a deny, then you almost certainly got a problem there. So yeah, generally be careful about sharing data with bad guys, and try and remove those tools. I change share this to, well, I'd probably just say remove it and change the static HTML link. Same with the Facebook like button. Also, if you're using share this and it's a health site, so you can actually check on built with, see if you've got share this active, then you're in double kind of problems because the health gets caught by additional laws like HIPAA, and again, it makes it much harder to defend. The other one I would say, again, other free tools, be really careful about. Amazon has an IP checker, which is used on lots of sites. Again, Amazon being a ad network, also Google Fonts, Google Translate, Google Maps. You might have heard the expression, if you don't know what the product is, you are the product. It's a famous statement about Google. What it means is when you do a search and in effect, you are being sold, data about you is being sold. In return, Google gives you a free service, which is a search engine, or in this case, access to a Google Fonts kind of widget or library. These you really should host locally or pay to use them with a non-ad network. Because again, a lot of these sit outside of consent. If you are using YouTube, there is a way to make it slightly better by changing it to no cookie mode. But again, if you could change to a video hosting provider that is not an ad network, that's even better. Yeah, so because a lot of these tools or widgets will share an IP address, which can be a personal identifier, and that's going to get you in hot water. The other one, be careful about adding remarketing tags on internal site search pages. So often they get added on all pages, and internal site search might have, especially if you're a site where you've got medical conditions which people might search for, or even if you've got medical condition pages, again, that could be a sensitive field or a sensitive data, and you don't necessarily want to send that to Google Ads or Facebook, especially if you don't have a BAA agreement in place. So I generally suggest blocking those two areas in your remarketing, kind of when you add remarketing tags, because you don't necessarily want kind of personal data to be shared. The same with keystroke tracking. So if you've got like a Microsoft Clarity or Hotjar, I would suggest marking your comment field with a don't enable keystroke tracking. You can also do it in the root of the form itself, the top level of the form. That's going to stop unintentional kind of wiretapping or listening, and going to make your defenses kind of better. The other one, if you are using auto block, which I generally suggest not using because it disables consent mode pings, and it also slows down site speed. But if you are using it, make sure it loads as the first thing on the site, and don't enable defer, because that basically makes it so it loads too late. And also make sure you update your autoblock list regularly. So here's a bit of code on here which will just check to see, have you deployed OneTrust every month or so, or at least minimum of the last 12 months, because it could be you add a new bit of code, you don't deploy an update to autoblock, and thus it doesn't stop that targeting tag from running, especially for small remarketing networks. So here's an example. Again, I'm going to pick on Disney. Sorry, Disney. They haven't updated OneTrust Autoblock for at least 7 months. So any new tags between, or small remarketing tags potentially, are not going to be stopped. The other one would be try and use template tags, not custom HTML, when you're using Google Consent Mode or GTM. It's going to help with automatic categorization. Don't forget to add tags to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Bing, which don't have native consent for ad storage, because the Google tags do have native, same with DoubleClick, but the non-Google don't. So a really common mistake is forgetting to mark these three here. Uh, the other one would be if you're using the Bing native tag, which does support default consent mode categories, you have to tick the box to say read the default for it to work properly. The other one would be careful of change in purpose. So Klaviyo and MailChimp, when they very first started, they were analytics purpose or analytics tools just for monitoring email campaign performance, but they've changed purpose to support connections to Google Ads, TikTok, Facebook via kind of back-end connections. So in effect, they've become targeting tags. So in that instance, you're better off setting them at the higher category of targeting. And or if sending the field, if it's a newsletter sign up or a login form, having an individual field that you send with the Klaviyo or MailChimp tag, so that you have kind of a consent chain that's passed into your kind of CRM or CDP. The other one is, again, be careful about Microsoft Clarity. People think, oh, it's an analytics tag, it's just doing session recording. The problem is it's owned by an ad network, so it's much safer to set this targeting. And at some point, Microsoft will probably start using that engagement data for remarketing. So again, put it in targeting. So you'll have a score. I've only covered about 5 of the privacy attack vectors in that list. There are a lot more. We don't have time to go through all of them now. We're going to jump to the next area, which is the technical defenses. So here it's just a quick litmus test. Are you using or aware of these Chrome plugin tools? So Ghostly, most people are aware of. So if you are using that, put an X on that box in the third tab on the sheet. If you are using the Privacy Sandbox, that's Google's one, still useful for certain things. Also, if you've got the vendor validators in here, so these are quite good in the sense that if you land on a site, send an opt-out in the CMP, refresh the page, and then you might see like Ghostly flagging, Facebook still running, and then you also see that flagged in the Meta Pixel Helper. So it's quite good to use a combination of these to double validate. The same with Global Privacy Control, especially if you're using Chrome, you've got to install that to send the signal from Chrome. And then if you're trying to test from, let's say, California, it's good to use a VPN, especially if your CMP doesn't support a kind of country override. And then last shout out is our tool, Consent Monitor Chrome extension. We've recently updated it. Go check it out. That will give you your consent score to see if you've got any tags missing consent. So you'll have a score out of that list with the ones that you're using. So you've got 3 scores now. That will all blend together. Oh, and just one other note with your CMP setups, I would generally suggest trying to set a CMP scanner up to scan in both accepted and denied or necessary only mode. The accepted stuff is good for just checking classification, but what you really want to know is what's the tags firing outside of consent when someone says deny. So this is your inline targeting tags. So it's the necessary only scan that has a really interesting, powerful, useful stuff in that, especially if you're scanning from California IP or you're adding a landing page override to force it to California. Also, don't forget about logged in or authenticated scans. And then last note on scanners, Screaming Frog has a good way of scanning all JavaScript files on a page or a site in bulk. If your CMP doesn't support that, we've also recently introduced a bulk scanner on Consent Mode Monitor for Google Sheets, so you can scan 1,000 sites in one go. And there is the Google Tag Diagnostic Scanner, but it only does Google tags and it's not really very good. But it is free. And then you can use sort of Claude and others. But the thing I would generally suggest about this is you only know what you know. So if you don't know how to configure these scanners properly, or you don't know what to look for, then you're going to be in trouble. So the more eyes you've got on something, and these are kind of people that you're paying to kind of find holes, i.e. ethical hackers, rather than kind of black hat plaintiff sort of thing hunting through the site, then that's a lot of a cheaper and better way to do it. Yeah, get more eyeballs on there. In short summary, you should have got a score on your site out of those 3 tabs now: the risk assessment score, how many privacy attack vectors you've triggered or tripped, And are you using all of those Chrome extensions that I've mentioned? Uh, so you'll have your total score. Anything less than 30 is not great, and you're probably going to need to ask for help. But I would say you don't need to kind of wait for a miracle. You can use some of the free extensions and tools that I've mentioned within here. And the key thing I would say is get help early or as soon as you can before you get hit. It's a lot easier to kind of fix it beforehand rather than try and defend it afterwards. And yeah, call in a mate to help out. The next 6 months is going to be a bit crazy. Uh, so, as I said, it's very likely that you will be hit. So it's really about pulling up your socks and bringing up your defenses. Uh, I suggest using as many tools as you can to improve your defense. Just one last thing, and sorry to be negative, but it's not just the plaintiffs you need to be careful about. There are also the regulators that are starting to wake up, and a lot of these fines on here are actually regulator fines as well. So another reason to be extra careful. So hopefully you've learned something from this talk, and feel free to reach out with in the questions. And I've listed some discount codes in here. The main thing I would say would be good luck in the next 6 months. All right, thanks. Bye bye.